This sunny day is number 6 of the 7-day February retreat, 2005, in Springwater. Actually, I don't have to say that anymore. I don't go any other place. Maybe I will, who knows? Miracles do happen. But it's nice being here. And people used to say, why do you always go away in the nicest seasons like fall and spring? That was a good complaint, a good question. Of course, the people where I went to felt the same way. Nice that you come in those good seasons. But like a poem in the Mumankan says, when useless things don't hang around in the mind, every day is a good day. The reason I brought this piece of paper along is it's an excerpt from, I think it is from Inquiring Mind, but it is about a book that I can recommend, at least parts of it. It's called, that's why I brought, it is called Negative Emotions, right? Destructive Emotions. And it is a seminar with Western scientists, psychologists, and brain researchers, and the Dalai Lama, who has been always very interested in science. Ever since this young Austrian, Harry Schara, visited him. He was a mountain climber and he happened to drop in. First they almost shot him. They had such wonderful security. They had good security, didn't let people in to Tibet during the Second World War. But he did make it, and the Dalai Lama became very interested in him because he could tell him things about science. One of the first things he asked him to do is to build him a movie theater where he could play newsreels or whatever he got his hands on. The Dalai Lama, that is, not Shara. He just built that thing for him. And there was also a friendship and nice relationship of interest developed between David Bohm and the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama was very, very interested in what Bohm had to tell him about theoretical physics. And he had an amazing capacity to understand, and Bohm had a great capacity to put things into understandable terms. So there's a very fruitful relationship. And in this seminar, which has been going on over the years, there's been this question about, is there a possibility for change in the brain? The question that occupied Krishnamurti's mind so much. Can there be a transformation in the brain cells, he used to call it. Total transformation of the brain cells so that we think differently and store differently our memories. And the interesting topic in this seminar that is dealt with in destructive emotions is that the seat of depression, for instance, and other like that, in what is called the amygdala, a little brain area way, way down, we've been referring to it here, down in the brain stem, and an area in the frontal lobes, in between the two frontal lobes, controls that amygdala. And this modern branch of psychology, which is called cognitive therapy, which many of you have heard about or maybe have even practiced or been a victim of. I'm just being facetious. It's really quite a good thing, because it is trying to do what we're doing here too, to see your thoughts and to find out if seeing the thoughts will affect a change in the brain that is in this amygdala where the negative emotions are stored. And it has been found experientially that if there has been a real honest-to-goodness recognition of the thoughts that affect the amygdala, the negative thoughts, the pain-producing or anxiety-producing thoughts, that it is possible to delay the response. There is what they call a refractory period before a response happens. It doesn't happen immediately. And if the seeing, it's neat, you can come upon this without studying all of this. But if you have studied it and experienced it and experimented with it, then it's also good to read about it, to have it put into intelligent words and say, this is what is going on. There is a delay in the response, and if the seeing happens during that refractory period, then the response doesn't happen. It's delayed. It doesn't happen. It's seen as being hurtful. So read up on it if you can find this book. I think we have a copy in our library. At least we had a copy. I don't know whether it's there right now. And then the Inquiring Mind had this review and has really quite nice excerpts of it, of the crucial segments of this book, namely that negative experiences are stored in the amygdala, but if response to them is delayed, and in that period of time they can be seen, the thoughts that are about to be reactive, if they are seen, they don't have to start blooming and blossoming. The seeing can terminate them. It's a marvelous discovery for each one of us, and is an answer to the question, can there be any change in human behavior? Because as the thoughts go, so go the reactions or the actions. Thoughts are action producing. It's not just that we think harmlessly about this or that, but we think and then there's an action potential. We want to act, we want to hit out, lash out verbally or physically. It's a beautiful segment in Vimalataka's writings, which we will read from later on. Later on is tomorrow. Where she says the verbal violence is the beginning of physical violence. So much for the cognitive therapy and the destructive emotions, and can there be a change? Now, I wrote some things down that came up in groups. The last question usually is the one that sticks best in the mind. so gets jotted down the most reliably. Somebody saying, how can I trust that right action or this potential for right action will come out of sitting? That by sitting minutes and hours and days and years, some people in certain traditions sit 3 years at a time, and then 3 times 3 years. So there's enormous sitting going on, particularly in the Tibetan tradition. And this person said, how can I trust that piling up a lot of sitting will mean right action will come out of that? She didn't quite put it this way, but this is how we can understand it, that there will be this action which is not steered by the me network. Well, it's in this book too that I read that a lot of meditation has an influence on this area between the 2 frontal lobes, which affects the amygdala, the place where negative emotions are stored. And they had what they call in this book the happy geshe. Geshe is a title in Tibetan rank order. They also have ranks and titles, and one is higher up than the other, and the geshe is a very studied, a man who has read of the considerable volume of books that have been written in Tibetan Buddhism. It is awesome what has all been studied and written down, and has to be studied by these aspiring future geshes. So there's written about a happy geshe, who the people who got him as a guinea pig, if you will, he volunteered to have his brain waves recorded with their machinery there in this lab, the brain scientists, and they were astounded. They'd never seen any brain waves like that before. This was something new. I think the pin went way over the paper, went into space. There wasn't enough room on there to record. It was a very poor description. I don't remember what they recorded, but it is probably a recording of the quietness or stillness happening in this frontal lobe or wherever. You don't need to remember these details, except that there is evidence that there is an effect of sitting long periods of time and something happening in the brain. And I don't think we need to read about it or see graphs and diagrams in a book. If we do this thing often enough and consistently enough with a dropping away of all of these me movements of ambition, seeing them and letting them drop away, of wanting to be the best and the foremost and win the gold medal and what have you, then something does happen to this brain. But you have to be consistent and faithful. And yet, some people who are consistent and do a lot of this are often very prone to depressed thoughts, like, now I've been doing this for 40 years, and what do I have to show for? I'm not enlightened. Well, how do you know whether you're enlightened or not? These are the doubtful thoughts which have been conditioned into this human mind and which have nothing to do with conditioned in that other realm of being and thinking. How good am I? Am I better than others? Have I gotten my grades? And so forth. Well, that doesn't fit into the work of this moment. But those thoughts aren't there all the time. And if they abate, then there may be times, or shall we say no times, where there's realization that there is nothing in the world to worry about, to be depressed about or anxious over. The realization, unshakable realization that everything takes care of itself in a wondrous way that cannot be explained in our usual thinking terms, thinking modes. So to come back to the question, how can I trust this sitting? I don't know how, but why do people come back and don't give it up and don't give it up, come back to it? Is it because this, what we call the checking back with the area which records, such a good word, which records what brings well-being, what is profitable, not in terms of money that you make, but of the well-being of this whole total organism as it is part of the totality of life. That check comes out positive. There's no doubt about it. Now, if you come from a busy day of in the office where you try to make some money or a little bit more money or not enough, or when you're worried about somebody else getting ahead with the publishing. Somebody said here, I think in this retreat, I haven't published anything in 2 years. Well, permit me to say, so what? It's the thing I asked my husband when he was dying, and he was for a moment consumed with the sorrow that he hadn't achieved anything in his life. He was the most wonderful person that you have ever met. But no, he hadn't achieved that sort of common conditioned thought overwhelmed him momentarily. And I just put my arms around him and I said, "You're here, Kyle, you're here." And that sort of wiped the slate clean. He dropped the whole problem. It was gone. It made sense on a level that is not our conditioned level. You're here. We're here. Are we? Are we here right now? Or are we in that network of wanting to be somebody? Famous, well-known, good-looking, living forever. Actually, there's one question, one time Krishnamurti said to Bohm in one of their more informal discussions, which wasn't put into book form. I got it because I know how do you call a person who takes care of the, Archivist, yes. He let me have, probably wasn't supposed to, but I got a lot of these transcriptions of these more informal, wonderful discussions between Bohm and Krishnamurti, don't ask me for them. I will not give them to anybody, because that's not really supposed to happen. But Krishnamurti says to Bohm, I can feel that this brain discards everything all the time. It takes things up and then it discards. And then he says to Bohm, such a brain should live forever, shouldn't it? And it is the scientist Bohm who says, no, there are many, many factors which work against that. The brain is a mortal affair. I don't know how he puts it, but he doesn't. And it was interesting to see that this wish was there too for Krishnamurti, to maybe for his brain, which was constantly cleansing itself. This is how he felt it. It didn't accumulate refuse. It had constant movements. Movements of elimination, that's what I meant. And would such a brain live forever? So the scientist says, no, that's not in the way of matter to live forever. So we came a long ways. Where did we come from here? From this. Let me look at the piece of paper. I can do that, it's okay. How can I trust that right action will come out of sitting? Well, the best response to any such question is, who are you asking? Why are you asking Toni? Find out for yourself. That's the best way of testing anything. Test for yourself, and then try to verify it with someone who you have some trust in, who may have maybe a little bit longer experience, or whatever the reason for trust. But find out whether in sitting, let's say you have a problem. It happens to me when I write, and I cannot get through some kind of a knäuel. I don't know what the English word is for when your yarn gets all huh? A whole tangle, an impasse. I don't know how to put it. And then I just take the hands off of that keyboard and sit still. And it's almost certain that this brain will disentangle itself, and the right way of putting it will appear in the fingers at the last instance, and fingertips type the right thing. Later I may read it and think, well, it's not quite well enough yet. It should be put a little bit better, then find a better way. But there is here on my part a total trust in, when you deal with this work of looking, listening, discerning, subtle things, that it works to be come upon and to be expressed, hopefully well enough so that people will understand it and not just end up with a lot of misunderstanding, which happens too. So, find out if you can trust this thing by doing the sitting and bringing it in at a point when you're all befuddled over something, and see how it unfuddles in an amazing way. Oh, and very similar questions came up. How do I see that something is true? I want to see what's true. I want to come upon it. sort of unconditional truth. How do I see that? It's not easy to answer this because a lot of these things are not subject to scientific proof, not provable in the normal scientific way. It is for each one to come upon the right answer. You cannot prove it to someone else. And yet, this thing works. If you and I see the same thing, it's similar to what Krishnamurti said, see the same thing at the same time, in the same depth, then there will be no argument between us. There will be no misunderstanding between us. We will both see the same thing at the same time, at the same depth, unequivocally. It's an amazing fact. Try it out with a good friend who is just as crazy about this thing as you are. By crazy, I mean really into it, not picking it up today like a toy and dropping it tomorrow, or maybe the next minute. Sometimes it's not just tomorrow. Bailey, he's my dog friend from next door, and he brings a toy. He had a beautiful toy. It was a bone this big, but not a bone. It was in the zebra pattern, black and white stripes. And he loved this bone, but he would think nothing of dropping it someplace and leaving it there. He didn't keep it in the toy box neatly. So then when he'd come down with some old stick, not half as nice as that bone, I'd say, Bailey, bring the bone. That's much better. Where's the bone? And he'd run away and he'd come back either with a bone or with another not so good stick. But then maybe months later he'd come with a bone, not the whole bone anymore. It had become a fragment by now, till it became such a little piece of bone, but he still loved it. There was attachment in Bailey to this piece of bone, plastic bone. Now, why did I bring that up? You tell me, you laugh the loudest. Why did I bring it up? In what connection? Yeah. I should sit a while, huh?
Pick it up and drop it.
Yeah. Picking up.
People interested in this work, and some only look at it.
Oh yes, yes. And if you don't just like Bailey or kids, they pick a toy up and then they drop it. It is there. It's not droppable anymore. No longer can it be dropped, even though if you may forget it for a while, particularly if it produces pain, which it does. The mirror image it provides of us is not how we would like to see us most of the time. We would like to see us in ideal terms, and that mirror image is not anything ideal. It's realistic, truthful. And that makes that work very hard. And it makes it hard to work with people, because a lot of hostility can get projected on the so-called teacher. Because when we get angry, we have to project that anger, or we think we have to project the anger onto somebody because we don't like to have it here. It doesn't feel good, so let's throw it at somebody else. So that if you ever do this work or with someone else, expect that all kinds of stuff will be thrown at you or projected at you, which is not true. And beware of defensiveness. Rather, recognize it, see it. Yes, this is how it is. I did the same thing in that vein. So, actually Krishnamurti used to say, that was some of his profoundest sayings. He says, if you have started this work and have stuck with it, you have to keep with it. You have to stay with it. Even though there will be times when you wish you had never ever come across it, when you wish you had never ever started it. It's such a heavy thing, and yet you can't drop it either. After a certain point of time, you cannot drop it anymore. It's there. It's your life. And that's the beauty of it. Through thick and thin, to keep listening and looking and wondering. And wondering is this beautiful word which has both the questioning aspect and the wonder of it all, the beauty, the unfathomableness of it all, of being without knowing and seeing everything freshly as never before. Still, this is our last talk. Tomorrow there will be readings. And I warn you, don't just think our habitual way of thinking, oh, I've heard those before, I can leave. Now, you can leave, that's fine. But you may also find that you never have heard them before, because we always hear freshly. We always have a little bit less wax in the ears. Things become clearer without our doing anything, and that's why we hear things in a new way, even though we've heard them 20 times. So, somebody says, intellectually I do understand that the physical knots and tensions in me, in my body, need to be seen, and that in seeing them, the words that brought these tensions about years ago, the words, the threats, the experiences, all of that holds the body in a tense state, all of that will drop away in seeing it, in staying with it, looking at it, and watching it. Let me begin from the beginning. I do understand that tensions or tightness in the body, which we all experience and don't like, that they have been brought about by past experiences. Things that have been said to us, threats that have been said to us. We've been called bad names by people we love, by parents or lovers. Been called bad names, or things have been attributed to us that we didn't really do or didn't mean to do. And all of this has done its thing, holding the body in knots, in tensions, in undesirable and painful states. And I understand what you say, Toni. Just look at these tensions, feel them, climb into that body, be right in the midst of these states with awareness. No matter how much it hurts or how much you want to run away from it, don't. Stay with it and maybe the tensions will give way to awareness, to the awareness that is looking at them. The first time I experienced that, it was just like walls of scales falling off the eyes. The same words or the same experiences that brought were now visible and dropped away. Now the person says, I see that intellectually, but for it to happen, really, that's another matter. I wish it would happen more often, more dramatically. How can it happen more dramatically? Can you give me more hints of what to do? Does that question make sense with everyone? Maybe not now, maybe some other time. So what to do? You know, in this work of this moment, sometimes another book I called it The Joy of Discovery, or Seeing Without Knowing, there's only always one answer. It's very simple. Like this teacher there says, attention, attention, attention. Attention, attention, and then some more attention. Awareness, presence. Not running away from whatever begins to announce itself. Discomfort. Not to run away from discomfort, but rather, what is it? What is this now? What is it? Not, oh my God, what is this now? But but what is it? What is it with a curiosity that is not condemning or barring? It doesn't erect walls. You know what that word brings to mind? I got to tell it to you because it's so powerful. I bought, because I got it with a cheap price, the CD or the DVD, The Pianist. Did you people see that? The Pianist? Incredible movie. And I thought I knew quite a bit about what happened to Jews, and having now gone to Poland quite a bit and having real, lovely, wonderful, dear friends there, I never knew that the Polish Jews themselves were made to build that wall, which would comprise the ghetto that they were to live in. I didn't know that. I knew hardly anything of what happened, and we knew more than a lot of the German people because my mother listened to the BBC, to the foreign radio news, under great danger. So she and our cook, they huddled together and were under the impression that we kids didn't know anything about it. Of course we knew what they were doing. We wish they had let us in and hear too, because it was very difficult to hear through these walls what they were listening to. But leaving that alone, I didn't know. I wonder whether my mother knew that the people themselves were building that wall, cementing it under the most incredible of humiliation or humiliating talk, jives. It's so amazing what people feel free and easy to do to other people. What is lacking in them? What are they going without that they can bring this about? I mean, to make somebody, well, of course, that's an order, and if they don't fulfill an order, then they may have to build a wall too. But this pleasure in humiliating someone else is an amazing human characteristic, often among kids. Kids love to hurt each other. Not all kids, not all the time, but this perverse pleasure in seeing somebody with words. And I was thinking of this rhyme. What is it?
Sticks and stones can break my
Bones, but words will never. That's not true, is it? Oh my God, that's not true. No. The sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never do it. Huh?
Will never hurt me.
Will never hurt me. That person must have led a very happy life. I'm glad we're laughing again, because I don't want to end this talk on a whole cup full of tears. Because it's not necessary to cry, because life moves on in the most amazing way and forgets. To me, now, I raised the question originally, why do we remember all these things? The most wonderful gift is how we can forget. How we can forget what somebody said. I'll just say this one instance. Somebody had said to somebody else something hurtful about me. That was in the beginning of this center, when we started out building our own center. And this person who had said this mean thing was on vacation. But somebody else sort of, how do you say, snitched? Or, yeah? And told me. And 3 weeks later, when this woman was back, the snitching friend said, "What did you say to her?" Or I said, "What? About what?" Well, what I told you, I couldn't remember it. And I thought how nice this is. I can meet her, and she can meet me, and it has never happened. Because it wasn't all she felt about me. And so it didn't come between us. And now that I was reminded of it, it didn't have any power anymore. That power had fizzled completely. So let's be grateful for forgetting, huh? Have a day to remember forgetting. Pull up the flag. No more wars will be remembered, huh? Okay, that's it for today.